The fake news media have completed their exhaustive investigation into last week's Waukesha massacre, and through the assiduous application of the journalistic arts, they have determined that the real culprit was not the crazed black nationalist psychopath who drove his car into a Christmas parade, killing at least 8 and wounding over 5 dozen others. The real culprit, it turns out, was the car? Now, obviously, it sounds totally ridiculous and absurd to imply that the perpetrator of a violent act was the weapon being wielded rather than the person wielding it, but to the fake news media's credit, they are at least consistent in their stupefying idiocy, as well as in their proclivity for lying, as well as in their distaste for doing anything that might be described as ethical news reporting. For this latest act is in keeping with the behavioral pattern that they've spent many years now perfecting. For example, each time some mass casualty event occurs in which the assailant wielded a firearm, the media, Democrat, big tech complex are always quick to inform us that the guilty party is not the person wielding the gun, but rather the gun itself. And this is invariably followed up with a frenzied hue and cry for something called common sense gun control legislation, the definition of which seems to be along the lines of repealing the Second Amendment and forcibly confiscating all the firearms in the country from whoever happens to own them. This has been such a tried and true canard of the gun-grabbing radical left for so many years now that it was the impetus for the invention of the NRA's most famous slogan, "Guns don't kill people, people kill people," which I, of course, later revised to read, "Guns don't kill people, Alec Baldwin kills people." But I think this is the first time they've actually taken the new and fanciful step of blaming it on the motor vehicle when an act of vehicular homicide takes place. They're trying to make this story disappear just as quickly as they possibly can, but they can't memory hold it completely. At least not this fast, so they have to precede the memory holding with a bit of good old-fashioned gaslighting and tie themselves up into a bunch of weird pretzel shapes trying to take the facts of the story and make them comport with the current prevailing industry paradigms, the most important of which, in this case, is the idea that black men are incapable of any act of moral or criminal depravity. So, if a black man is alleged to have committed some heinous crime, and it's something serious and noteworthy enough that they have to spend some time talking about it before they make the story disappear, we sort of always see the same series of events play themselves out. The first and the best option, of course, is to take the actions of the black criminal and blame them on a white guy, ideally a police officer. But in cases where that can't be done, this case being an example, because it's difficult trying to invent a narrative where a honky-hating black nationalist gangster rapper plows his SUV into a bunch of little kids and grandmothers, but it's all really the fault of white America and systemic racism. But that's when they'll resort to blaming the weapon instead of the scumbag criminal thug who was using it. And so today, right on schedule, the Associated Press, USA Today, and the New Woke Times all published articles about the Waukesha massacre, which failed to make any mention, even an oblique mention, even in passing, of the suspect who stands accused of 6 counts of first-degree murder. So in none of these articles will you see a sentence like, "The suspect allegedly drove his vehicle into the crowd." Rather, these titans of American journalism all opted instead for sentences along the lines of, "A car drove into the crowd," because, hey, sometimes these things happen in real life in addition to Stephen King novels, I guess. Sometimes a car gets possessed by a malevolent spirit entity and decides on its own volition to go on a killing spree and frame its owner for the crime, which is all that much easier when said owner, just coincidentally, happens to enjoy performing rap songs about murdering white people and writing social media posts about murdering white people. But he would never, not in a million years, contemplate actually murdering white people. It was the evil car that did all that. So how about, let's all try to be a bit less racist and stop calling this guy a terrorist, white-hating spree killer. Now, Joe Biden says he's not going to be calling or visiting any of the families of the victims, and nor will Kamala Harris. According to White House Press Secretary Lady Ginger McFirebush of Alabaster Farms, the president and the vice president are both just too damn busy to take time out of their jam-packed schedules to go offer sympathy and commiseration to the families of the victims of this sextuple murder. And I'm sure they would have given exactly the same answer if this had been a white conservative domestic terrorist who killed 6 people at a BLM march. Neither the president nor the vice president would ever pick and choose whom they publicly sympathize with according to whether they can parlay it into a convenient political narrative. So it's strange that they both had all the time in the world last year, right in the middle of the final weeks of a presidential campaign, to parachute their asses into Kenosha for tea and crackers and hugs and kisses with Jacob Blake's family. After which they spent days on end telling us how amazing and brave and courageous these people are, and how Mr. Blake himself, who, for those in need of a reminder, was wanted on a rape warrant, he was attempting to kidnap his children from their mother after trying to rape her again, and was violently brandishing a large knife at the police. But he was the innocent, blameless victim of a white racist cop who shot him 7 times just for shits and giggles. And because of that fake narrative and the willingness of the fake news media to run with it, the city center of Kenosha was largely reduced to a smoldering cinder. 3 people got killed in self-defense by Kyle Rittenhouse. Dozens more were injured. Hundreds of millions of dollars of property was destroyed, and Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, they could have stopped that from happening just by saying, hey, emotions are running high. Let's not jump to any conclusions. Let's all remain calm and let the justice system do its work. But they didn't do that. They saw that there was political hay to be made, and they were damn well going to make it. And hey, if one little upper Midwestern town has to get put to the torch, if some people have to die, that's a small price to pay if there is a political dividend to be had. But having said all that, I don't think the bereaved families are going to be missing out on much, because we know what these things look like when Joe does them. He comes up, shakes your hand, checks his watch a couple dozen times, mutters a few unintelligible sentences about, well, I got a dead son, so I know exactly what you're going through. And then he's gone as quickly as he came because he doesn't want to miss the beginning of Murder, She Wrote. Speaking of which, I have it on fairly good authority that Jim Eagle used to have a crush on Angela Lansbury. Do I have that right? From I Adopt the Battlements of Castle Curmudgeon, where if you kill somebody in a drunk horse riding accident, we immediately execute the horse. Good evening, Mr. and Mrs. America, and all ships at sea. Welcome to the program. I am your eponymous host and humble servant, and I trust most of you will have heard the news by now that our good friend of the program, Jack Rasputin, the volleyball whisperer, the man who arguably has caused more harm to the quality of the public discourse than any man currently living or currently dead, is stepping down as the CEO of the 140-character brain poison hate machine that we lovingly know as Twitter. But fear not, ladies and gentlemen, because the guy who's replacing him is an even bigger woke maniac than Jack is, and he isn't white, so obviously this is a magnificent day for equity, diversity, and inclusion. At least to the extent that one can be diverse and inclusive while simultaneously being a foaming-at-the-mouth anti-white racist, which the new Twitter CEO, a guy by the name of Parag Agrawal, evidently is. Now, it's a bit surprising that this guy didn't sanitize his social media history before being named as the new head of the company, for it seems like he ought to have known that, one, I've said some pretty awful, pretty hateful, pretty racist things on here over the years, and 2, when they announced my new promotion, people will probably start combing through my social media history with a fine-toothed comb, so 3, it would probably be a good idea to either set my accounts to private or just delete fucking everything before I become one of the masters of the universe and my name becomes a household name, at least to the extent that Americans can remember a name like Parag Agrawal. And if I say that sounds like the name of a Star Wars character, does that make me racist? Because if so, I think I'm okay with that, because I'm still hell of a lot less racist than this guy is. So This announcement was only made around 12 hours ago, so there hasn't yet been sufficient time for a completely thorough deep dive into this dude's entire social media history, but even still, after only a cursory little bit of a shallow dive, we've already got some pretty good whoppers. Example, 26 October 2010, this guy tweeted the following: "If they are not going to make a distinction between Muslims and extremists, then why should I distinguish between white people and racists?" He doesn't tell us who they are, and we don't have the rest of the thread available to provide context, but I think it's not unreasonable to surmise that they refers to white people or Christians or conservatives or quite possibly all of the above. I guess we shouldn't be surprised by a leftist predicating an argument on a feeble strawman fallacy, since this behavior is par for the course when you're a 21st century wokester. The crux of the point he's attempting to make seems to be something like, well, if white people say all Muslims are extremists, then why shouldn't I say all white people are racist? Now, personally, I have never heard any individual, white or otherwise, suggest that all Muslims are extremists or terrorist sympathizers. And even if they had, even if such attitudes were as commonplace as Mr. Agrawal seems to think, the moral equivalency he attempts to draw in this tweet is still a bunch of incoherent nonsense. He effectively is saying, oh, it's all right for me to be racist because you were racist first, you asshole. It's a nonsense argument to begin with, but it's rendered more nonsensical yet by the fact that, drumroll please, Islam is still not a race. Because, look, the white-skinned, blue-eyed Bosnian, Albanian Muslims would probably be shocked to learn they are members of the same race as the black sub-Saharan African Muslims in Sudan or Somalia, or the ethnically Chinese Uyghur Muslims in Tibet. It never fails to amuse me when I hear arguments like that, wherein members of the woke identitarian left, in the attempt to smear white American conservatives as a bunch of racists, predicate their attacks on the rather laughable assertion that it is racist to criticize a religion. I'm sure there will be more goodies forthcoming from Mr. Agrawal's Twitter feed, provided he doesn't have one of his underlings go through his archives, like right now as we're speaking, and scrub all the racist stuff out of existence. And if so, good luck with that, because the Wayback Machine is still our friend. It is the gift that keeps on giving. So go ahead, dude. To paraphrase Hotel California, you can delete anything you like, but it will never leave. As far as Jack Rasputin, the volleyball whisperer, goes, I think the timing of his departure is probably no accident. This guy has done a hell of a lot of lying under oath to the Congress in the past couple years. So much, in fact, that he could probably give Tony Fauci a run for his money, which is really saying something. So just go ahead and ignore this guy's made-up reasons for why he says he's stepping aside. I want to spend more time with my family. Nope. I want to focus on my other business interests. Nope. I want to turn Twitter over to someone with a fresh set of eyes. Nope! Make no mistake, this guy is stepping down because he knows there is a midterm election next year. He knows, just like everybody else knows, that this election is going to be a 5-alarm dumpster fire bloodbath for the Democrats. He knows that starting in January of 23, Republicans are likely to have sizable majorities in both houses of Congress, and along with those new majorities may come a desire to bring perjury charges against certain people who have gleefully and brazenly lied under oath before a wide variety of congressional committees during these 2 years of Democrat control. And if he's desirous of avoiding such charges, he would do well to cash in his chips right now and fade into obscurity and get the hell off of the public stage, so as not to leave his ass hanging out. And it may work, it may not work. When Ted Cruz becomes the ranking majority member on the Technology Committee, I doubt he is going to forget being lied to by Mr. Volleyball Whisperer. And I doubt he's going to take any more kindly to it just because Mr. Grown-Ass Man with a nose ring is now living in seclusion and semi-retirement, which I assume he'll be able to do because his homeless wino beard will be twice as long as his normal homeless wino beard. And no, Tony Fauci, I did not forget about you. You thought you were getting off easy with that one passing mention, didn't you? You smarmy little hobbity bastard, you. So Fauci was all over the Sunday news shows yesterday. Stop me if you've heard that song before. And I guess he has decided to just not pretend anymore. He's no longer going to even put up the pretense of a front that he is anything but a bomb-throwing partisan Democrat Party operative. When he was on Face the Nation on CBS, which I believe was his 4th of 619 media interviews yesterday, he even wants to be on this show, but I keep telling him to fuck off. And the hostess asks him, well, I guess it wasn't really a question, but she made mention of the fact that Senator Cruz has said that you, Dr. Fauci, should be prosecuted for perjuring yourself before the Congress. And there ensues from Dr. Fauci a fit of nervous laughter that here we all thought the vice president was this administration's master of awkward, out-of-place cackling, but Fauci gave her a run for her money here yesterday. But it's interesting to note that he, Dr. Tony Fauci, the man who refers to himself in complete seriousness as the personification of science itself, he went straight to the non sequitur. I should be prosecuted? What happened on January 6th, Senator? Now, this isn't the first time we've noticed this with Dr. Fauci. That someone calls him out for being a liar, and where you would expect a man in that position to immediately defend his good name against such risible slanders, he instead either changes the subject or goes to a non sequitur. Remember the exchange with Senator Paul where he got so flustered that he had to read his denial off of his note cards? Senator Paul, you are completely and totally incorrect. Which was a strange thing in its own right, because how can a question be incorrect? It's just a question, Tony. I think maybe you grabbed the wrong note card there, buddy. So the host of Face the Nation brings up the fact that at least one senator thinks his, Dr. Fauci's, conduct rises to the level of warranting a prosecution for perjury. And what does Dr. Fauci do? He stops pretending. He drops that last little pretense of being an objective, dispassionate, politically neutral public health professional. What happened on January 6th, Senator? And what is that even supposed to mean? Like, do you actually not know what happened on January 6th? Or are you making some intimation that Senator Cruz incited the Capitol riot? Because irrespective of which thing he meant, it seems pretty telling that his response was not to deny having committed the crimes of which he is being accused. And isn't that what innocent people do instinctively upon hearing a false accusation of criminal malfeasance? And what happened on January 6th, Senator? Now, frankly, if you're still trusting this ghoulish little troll to be your authoritative source of medical information, then you are as dumb as he is. Because you have to be, for real, viewing this guy as a religious figure. If you can listen to him, he's departing into James Carville mode here, just hurling the laziest kind of partisan insults, the kind of invective that one normally hears from actual DNC employees. And if you can hear that and still think he's an honorable, upstanding public servant with no agenda, no ulterior motives, you're just insane. He may have made a fairly serious mistake here, though, rhetorically, because it's impossible to read that question. What happened on January 6th, Senator? It sounds like an attempt to draw a moral equivalence with his own conduct, in which case that would be a tacit admission of guilt, would it not? And he's implicitly saying, like, sure, maybe I got duped into helping communist China build a bioweapon, and sure, maybe I lied about it a whole bunch of times, and sure, maybe I lied about lying about it, and sure, maybe I used my own professional misconduct as a springboard to multimedia superstardom. But at least I didn't incite a riot at the Capitol, you filthy insurrectionist. And one can't help but wonder if maybe Tony Fauci in the near future is going to have an attack of Jack Dorsey syndrome and be overcome with the urge to quietly bow out and not take his chances on remaining in his present role after the Republicans take control of the Congress. Oh, I guess we haven't talked about the stupid Omicron variant. Probably because it sounds like the name of a bad science fiction novel, and I'm goddamn sick and tired of talking about stupid Chinese flu viruses from China. But according to the third-rate performance artists on the fake news shows, you should be very, very afraid, because this could be almost as serious as climate change. Greta told me I have to say that. She's standing just off camera holding a Luger on me, and she looks really pissed off. How dare you! We'll leave it there for tonight. Here is wishing everyone a pleasant tomorrow. I'll be back with you Wednesday. Thank you for watching. Do not comply. Get off my lawn.